Hi, welcome to Cubs and Culture for 10/21/2018. It's going to be a Red Sox Dodger World Series because the Brewers finally collapsed, which is a little bit sad. Any case, we're up to From Here to Eternity, which is the Best Picture winner in 1953. The movie was from a book, and then the movie itself was very controversial because it presents a panoramic view of Hawaiian military life right before Pearl Harbor, like the 6-7 months before Pearl Harbor. And it follows three different soldiers around, Pruitt, Angelo, and then Warden. And all the stories are sort of sorted and don't present, they're not really a negative view of the military, but it's a much more human take on the military than you normally get. So it's sort of kind of in a weird way. It's this movie is a nice companion piece to The Best Years of Our Lives because of the three different soldiers and three different plot lines. In any case, I'm going to break it down. The movie is, I really like this movie. It was nominated for, it won 8 Oscars, and then it was nominated for 13, 5 others. It's incredibly well acted. Unfortunately, the main character, Montgomery Clift, who's sort of the main reason why I like this film, he did not win because he got canceled out by Burt Lancaster. Montgomery Clift was a series of actors in the 50s, the other two being James Dean and Marlon Brando, who sort of brought a new sort of method, acting and very intense. And now Montgomery Clift lived a very sad and tragic life because he was either gay or bisexual. There's a couple of times he quoted saying things like, "I love women, but I love men more." And he became an alcoholic. He was never out while he was alive, and he died of a heart attack when he was 1945. When he was 45 years old. About 5 years after this movie, 10 years after this movie. In any case, Cliff gives a very good performance, and it's really tragic as Pruitt, and I really like it. And I think Montgomery Clift, just his personal life sort of fed into this performance, this sort of stubbornness. Anyway, let me bring up some clips and some other stuff. See you in a sec. Okay, so one of the best features of this film is it sort of acts as an implicit criticism of the U.S. military, because the movie ends with the attack on Pearl Harbor, and the various plot lines of the three soldiers you follow around they're not as important as a military Pearl Harbor. And so there's a sort of a slow burn in this movie, where you kind of get a sense that it's going to end with the Pearl Harbor attack, and the dates, and the date is just constantly getting closer and closer and closer. And so it has a very leisurely pace in a sense. Obviously, that's the most famous shot because of the pace. So the pace might bother some people because the movie is a little bit slow, but I really like that quality because it seems like we shouldn't have been paying attention to the nonsense that we were when we should have been doing our job more, and which is really interesting to find that sort of implicit criticism in a Best Picture winner. Anyway, so this is Pruitt, and his main story. It's very similar to Cool Hand Luke, and where it's a sort of a battle of wills, and he's a good boxer, and his commander wants him to box because he wants to be promoted by winning a boxing championship. And this is Pruitt explaining why he won't box because he's a year or so ago he actually accidentally blinded a friend, and so now he's unwilling to box, and so all the sergeants in this company are trying to get him to box, so he's being punished, giving extra duty, not giving passes and everything like that. And this woman, Laureen, is sort of his love interest, and he's explaining to her, and I really like this sort of, it's a sort of an irony, right? Because he's being incredibly strong-willed and stubborn, not willing to fight. And the way Cliff does this, Montgomery Cliff, is a very sort of stubborn, strong-willed masculinity, but it's in service of sort of a sensitivity and emotionally scarring situation, because he really doesn't want to fight, and it's such a touching sort of performance in light of that, and the way in which he sort of gets up and walks around, he has such a nervous energy to him, that it's just a great little bit of performance. And then Donna Reed plays Lorraine, who's the love interest, and she's also very good in this scene, and I really like their sort of relationship. So the movie, one of the ways in which it sort of is, it's whitewashed in the film to her being a hostess at a social club, but in the book, and pretty obvious in the movie, she's actually a prostitute at a brothel. And this scene is another beat in their story, because he's been being punished for not boxing. He's getting leave is very, very hard, and so this is him trying to get it away because he finally got leave. And there's something very, again, he has sort of a nervous energy to him, and I really like that in this movie that presents a panoramic view in the 50s of the military life. Even though it's whitewashed in the movie, there's still a sort of a sordid affair between a soldier, a private, and a sex worker. And I really like, again, the notion of Lorraine and then her actual name being Alma is important, because this movie is sort of ripping off the cover of the glamorous of military life, which in context of the 1950s is quite good. Okay, so at this point, Angelo has died, and I'll explain why when we get to his story. Pewart is a bugler, and it's the thing he really likes doing. He played for the president at one point, taps and everything like that, and sort of his main drive. And so at this point he's playing taps. Unfortunately, I can't play the sound, but he's playing taps because Angelo has been died, basically. And this is the most heartbreaking scene in the entire movie to me, and I think it's Montgomery Clift's best scene ever as an actor. There's just something, again, there's like a strong stubborn masculinity to him, with an undercurrent of sensitivity and tortured soulfulness, which you don't always get with these sort of characters. And it's just a very touching performance. And it was, it's a wordless performance, because he's just, I doubt he's actually playing the bugle, because I don't think he could do that. And so this character, Pewart, again, it's very much like Cool Hand Luke, where it's a battle of wills, and he just sort of stays with you. So even if you don't like the movie overall, I think everyone should be able to relate or find this character striking, because it's such an interesting, tender but yet strong performance, and it's really, really good. And I'm really surprised it's not talked about more, because it's very much in the same vein as for the method acting as like A Streetcar Named Desire or On the Waterfront, which is the next best picture. In this sort of stubbornness of the character, he ends up being killed at the end, and he's sort of a very tragic figure. And then it ties in with Cliff himself being tortured because of his sexuality. It's a very moving performance. Okay, so this sequence is about Angelo played very sardonically and sort of wisecracking and freewheeling. Free Spirit by Frank Sinatra, and probably his best performance. He won the Oscar for this. And his story is all about him getting into this fight with this prison guard. And it is coded for ethnic tension, because he's being called a wop here, which is, of course, a slur against Italian Americans. And everything like that. And so this is the first beat. This is the brothel, so they get into a fight here because he's playing the piano kind of badly, which Angelo doesn't appreciate. But their story is all about them fighting. And now at this point, Angelo, this is my favorite little bit in the scene, because it really shows his charm and everything like this. As he's drunk, he's going AWOL here. And he has this great bit of playing with olives as if they're crap dice. The other thing that's kind of interesting about this movie is men, intimate relationship with women keep getting interrupted by men, because that's, again, Pruitt with Alma, and he was sort of just interrupted again by his friend. In any case, this little bit right here is really amusing to me, and again, it's sort of interesting sociologically that Angelo is a bad soldier. He's AWOL and everything like that, but you're supposed to. This is sort of the first time in the history, or in Oscar history, where a less than flattering portrayal of the U.S. military occurred. Because in a sense, all three of them are bad soldiers. I mean, Pruitt ends up committing a murder in revenge for Angelo, and then Angelo goes AWOL and everything like that. And so they end and then Warden ends up having an affair, which I'll get to in a moment. But at the end, all these stories are much more human and sordid. And it portrays military life less glamorously than you had before in films. Anyway, so this is the final little bit of it, and this is the same guy in the bar, and he's actually going to indirectly murder him because, yes, you can tell by the because what happens is he escapes and then falls off a truck, and that's what literally kills him. But the thing is, this guy constantly beats him up, as you can tell by him picking up the nightstick. And so Fatso is just utterly abusive towards Angelo, which is, again, an interesting element to find in a 1950s movie about the military. Now, the final story is a love story involving Warden. Now, Karen Holmes, she's the wife of his company commander, who himself is more interested in boxing, and he's a bad commander, and he's abusing Pruitt and everything like that, and they're stuck in this loveless marriage. And I don't want to show the scene, but there's a scene in which, if you follow the text, it's very, very obvious that they're in not only a loveless marriage, but in I don't want to say open, but they're in this, they have an agreement that they both can sleep around as long as they don't acquire about it, and they both don't get caught. Because you'll find out that she had a miscarriage, basically, because while he was having an affair, she had a miscarriage because she was pregnant, and he came home drunk, and she ended up losing the ability to have children because he fucked up really badly by cheating and then being a drunk when he came home and couldn't get her to the hospital, which is sort of the subtext right here, which she's talking about the kinds of ways, well, she's a wasted woman because she can't have children, which in a weird way is still sort of gender norm, but at the same time, she has great agency. And this is one of the earliest representations of infidelity in the Best Picture winners, where it's actually not like, it's not actually held up as, I mean, it's held up as human and flawed and not necessarily glorified, but it's not held up as like this awful, awful thing. And because of that, it's very, very interesting. And it, in the 1950s, it was probably very, very shocking to see a story involving infidelity and implied brothel without it being being held up as, not necessarily bad, just human, flawed, imperfect, but still okay. And I like that quality of the film because it sort of humanizes the military, which you don't necessarily get a lot in American cinema, especially around World War II. And it also acts as sort of an implicit criticism of they're focusing on petty squabbles when they should have been focusing on the Japanese. I love this shot. To me, this is the best shot in the movie. Because it really gives the impression of their affair being forbidden because of the plant covering them up. Okay, so this is probably my favorite scene in the movie, and the machinations of the plot They're both having women trouble, specifically Warden, who's the guy on the right. Karen wants him to become an officer so she can divorce Holmes. And he's resistant to that because he's a non-commissioned officer, and the whole non-commissioned versus commissioned officer thing, that he likes being a sergeant. And then Cliff, Pruitt, where Alma won't marry him, but she wants to be proper. And she doesn't consider marrying a soldier proper. And so there's sort of this vague notion that he's sitting in the road to be run over by a truck. He doesn't get run over by a truck, and I really like this because it's sort of a fucked up scene because it's something of a suicide attempt. It's something of a homosocial bonding moment, because at the end, Warden will start sort of stroking his hair, everything like that, and it's sort of a weird Band of Brothers moment, but at the same time it's sort of messed up because it's, they're drunk and and they're totally against army, and they're totally misbehaving as soldiers, and it's such an touching scene in a way because of that, because it makes the military life seem far more human than you normally get. And so in the end, I really like this film. It might be my favorite film directing that deals with World War II. Mostly deals with World War II. I like the slowness of the film, like it ends up being a slow burn. I like that the stories are much more human, that the soldiers are more anti-heroes than heroes, and it just ends up being a very, this is what I meant by him stroking his hair, which again seems very homosocial to me. It just ends up being a very interesting panoramic view of military life, while also acting as something of a criticism that they're focusing on the wrong things and not on the Japanese, and that's why Pearl Harbor happened. Anyway, so that'll be it for Cubs and Culture. See you guys tomorrow.